Hello, Amherst County community. My name is Rob Arnold, Superintendent of Schools.
And I'm Derrick Brown, Principal of Amherst County High School. Today we wanted to come to you as a pair and speak to the community about all the unrest that is going on, stemming from the death of George Floyd, the riots that are happening, just the civil unrest across the nation. We know that as a community, our community is not immune to these issues, and we want to speak and lead in a way and just let you hear from our hearts and have a conversation with you guys about all the events that are going on here. I know that racism is something that's prevalent all across our nation, and our community is certainly not immune from racism and prejudice and injustice. But we want to be part of the solution, and we actively want to acknowledge our role as leaders in the community and educators in the community. I personally have struggled with these feelings, and we hear the news of another black person who's passed away, whose life was taken. It's something that's sobering, and I haven't really fully processed myself, to be honest with it. And so one thing that I had to do was have conversations about this with different people, and I've spoke with my father about it, I spoke with some close friends about it, and I'm still trying to wrestle with those feelings of frustration, those feelings of anger, those feelings of uncertainty. And this is something that it's going to take a while for me to figure out in my own brain and my own emotions. And so, like I said, Dr. Arnold and I really wanted to come to the community and have these conversations with you all. And so, Dr. Arnold, I think I'll start just by asking you, how do you feel about everything that's going on so far?
So, I've struggled too, maybe for different reasons, but you know, we've been through a lot as a community and as a country in the last 3 months, you know, and I think tensions were naturally high, but you know, this has really brought some very raw feelings to the forefront. And my struggle, I'm sad, I'm disappointed that this is our country. You know, not that I'm disappointed in our country, I'm disappointed that this is still such a prevalent issue in our country. And I feel a little guilty as a white male. I understand, I guess, the privilege that I've had as a white male in this society, and I'm now in a position where I believe I can help. I believe I can help move our community to better places. I'm an educator, and I have such belief and hope in our students and in our next generation, and so I want to be a part of helping them get to a better place, you know, in a society that's more diverse and more accepting, and so that's, you know, that's kind of where I am. You know, I don't have the lived experiences as a white male, so maybe I'm interested in how does this impact you in terms of your experiences?
Right, that's a great question. And when all this happens, and anytime something like this happens, because this is certainly not the first time, as a black man in America, I think about all my own lived experiences and all the things that I've gone through in my life. You know, I've had a good life, you know, 2 great parents, great education, great teachers who have loved me and accepted me. But, you know, I have had different experiences with racism. You know, even in my job as a principal, being called the N-word, you know, going to college and then having, you know, police knock on my window with a group of friends just because we're waiting on our other friend to come out of the house when there's 2 cars down, a car full of people who don't look like us, and they're just left alone. You know, I think of times where, you know, I've personally been pulled over by police, and there just didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for being pulled over. You know, those are experiences that make you question, you know, why they're happening to me. And they're hard to process, you know, especially when you have a doctorate and you're being followed through a store by theft protection. you know, it's 2020, and you have to question, you know, why are these things happening to me? And I know that my experiences are unique to me, but that's a perspective of a black man here in Amherst County. That's totally different from a black man in Lynchburg. That's totally different from an Asian man in Charlottesville. It's totally different from an interracial female here in the county. And you can't lump all minorities' experiences into one category. You can't say that there has been police brutality against every black man, because it hasn't been. You can't say that, you know, every Asian person or every Hispanic person has experienced racial injustice in the same way. I think there are biases that are in the community, and there are prejudice, but I think the major thing to acknowledge is that racism is still very prevalent in our nation. And it comes out in different ways, but it impacts everybody, not just black people or black males. It impacts white males, it impacts white females, and it's important for us to acknowledge that, because our students come to us with these experiences as well. And I've had several conversations with students throughout the year and throughout my career, and they struggle to process it too. You know, I'm a well-educated man and well into my 30s, and I have to intentionally stop and think and process what's going on and how I feel about these things, and what am I going to do about that. So to be a teenager or an adolescent or even a child and seeing all this in the news and you know, not really knowing what to think about that is really challenging and difficult. So I think one thing that I want to talk to you about is, you know, what have we done or what can we do to help our students?
So, you know, as I was listening to what you just said, one of the most impactful moments that I've had since I've been in Amherst County, I went and sat down with one of our students, a black male, and his mother, and sat in their kitchen for quite a while and had a conversation about the way that he has felt about being in our schools. And that was really disheartening, because he felt like he was singled out for behaviors that maybe others were doing as well, but didn't get the consequences that he got. And you know, he's felt this way for 10, 11 years in our system. And it really struck me as, you know, as an institution, educational institution, that we should be better than that. You know, we as adults that are here to serve as a model for our students, we as adults need to be better than that. And one of the things that I read yesterday was this perspective that, and you said you're a black man with a doctorate, I'm a white man with a doctorate, but to get to where I am versus you getting to where you are today, I only had to consider the white perspective, right? The white man's perspective, whether it's in the books that I read, the classes that I took, the jobs that I got. I just understood that it was from a white man's perspective. I did not have to take anyone else's perspective in order to move forward.
Right.
You, on the other hand, everything you did had to be from someone else's perspective and not your own. You had to look at the world through the perspective of white eyes. And that struck me yesterday as like, I've understood that where my privilege comes from, but I never really considered it in that way. And so as I think about our schools and how we teach our children, we still teach material that is only from a white perspective. And I think that that's one place that I know we can get better as a school division, that we can actively seek different perspectives, black perspectives, Hispanic perspectives, Asian perspectives, female perspectives. All of those things will go a long way in making our students feel like they're a part of, they belong, that they're valued, their perspective is valued. And so that's one of the things I know we can do. Last year we started a diversity council in the school division and had a lot of great folks on that committee that are still working, and we worked really hard to develop an equity plan. But the plan is just that right now. It is a plan. It's words on a paper.
Right.
And we need to make it happen. We need to implement those things. So as a school division, from my perspective, I think we are moving in the right direction, but we are in no means where we need to be. And so my hope is that we can continue, that if anything good can come out of this, is that we move our school division and our community to a better place.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because inequity greatly diminishes opportunity. And we know that a lot of times with some of these achievement gaps, it's really an opportunity gap. And some of our students don't have the same opportunities as students in other ethnic groups or other subcategories, whether it's disabilities or racial categories. So it's really important for us as educators to be intentional about looking at those underrepresented groups and making sure that when we are making our plans and we're thinking about our school system, we're thinking intentionally about all of our kids. It's really important for our kids to feel comfortable in our schools, and I think you're exactly right. Our minority students are having to navigate two different cultures on top of learning content. Right. And so as our teachers are teaching, they have to create culturally affirming curriculums that have students represented in actual illustrations and actual examples. But our teachers have to dive deep, and us as principals and educators, we have a responsibility to dive deep, and representation matters a ton. But we have to acknowledge that representation isn't the end-all be-all. And because, like I said before, my experience as a black man is totally different from my brother's experience as a black man. And you can't lump all minorities in one category and say that they have the same experience. And I think that's a misconception that sometimes we fall into. And so if we are really intentional about building relationships, which I've loved and really bought into as far as your vision for our county, if we build relationships, intentional, meaningful relationships with these students, find out what's important to them, find out what their experiences are, we're able to tie that into curriculum, and we're able to tie that into instruction, and that does engage folks a lot more and engages our kids a lot more. So it's extremely important for us to have those relationships with students and actively seek out relationships, not just with students, but with our parents and with our community members, to see what's important and what the experiences of everybody in our community is. We have to be serious about ensuring racism doesn't show its face in our schools. We can't just sit here on camera and speak in empty platitudes. We can't be complicit. And
well, and I go back to that part that I said at the beginning is about guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a position, and I think we're all in a position where we can make sure that those things don't happen, and we stand against it. We actively stand against those things and not just turn a blind eye to it and allow it to happen, because that is being complicit. Right. And it is allowing those kinds of things to happen. And so my hope and my goal from this conversation and moving forward to families and children in our division is that they can understand that we're not going to stand for it. We are going to do the things that are necessary to make all of our children feel, all of our parents feel like they're valued in this community.
Yeah. What do you say to the person or the educator that says, I'm not racist, I don't see color, and everybody is the same, and I treat everybody fairly and equally, but they haven't really taken the time to reflect on how their actions unintentionally impact other people?
Right. We all have biases, obviously. I mean, we all have experiences that have determined how we see the world. And I think that what I would say to whether it's our teachers or our parents or our students is that understand that that's there. Like, we all have it. You have it, I have it. We all have our experiences, but we have to recognize it.
Right.
And then we have to understand other perspectives and where other people come from, and have empathy for that, and have an understanding that it is different than my lived experience. Your lived experience is different than my lived experience.
Right.
And so I think the number one thing is naming that, you know, calling it what it
Right.
is, that it's an implicit bias, and we have to understand that, and we have to recognize it, and then we have to do things to overcome those biases.
I think you're spot on with that. And I do believe that, you know, it's important for us as a school system to acknowledge our role in the community. A lot of times people will say that racism, or there are these systemic issues in the community, and they bleed into the schools, and so it's not really a school issue. I personally believe, and I feel that from our conversation you feel the same way, that the schools have a huge role and a huge impact, and combating racism is something that we can take responsibility for, and we can take action, because we're developing lifelong learners, and we're life-ready students and citizens, and it's our responsibility to teach kids and model the behavior of citizenship, appropriate citizenship,
Right.
and respecting every member of the community, and valuing equity, and looking deep in our own biases, and making sure that we're moving forward in a positive way. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge our role in the community, and our role in being able to combat some of these issues, and not just pass the buck, but stand up and say, you know, we still have a lot of work to do, but
That's
we're
right.
serious about this
Yeah,
work.
we own, we own our deficiencies in this area. But I also can say we are going to actively seek to change those things and to get better, because we also want our students to see that you can change,
Right.
and you can improve, and you can be better to one another, and value human life, and so so what are some of the things you think we could tell our families and our students now, as we move forward from right now? I'm not saying that these problems are ending,
Right.
so what do we do, or what can parents do?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's never wise to fight fire with fire, because in the end everybody gets burned. And so I think we have to come together in unity and work together, have conversations about what we want for our kids, what we want for our community. And I love that you've been really active in the community, and inviting feedback, inviting conversations to start. And so I think that moving forward, this dialogue definitely will continue, and should continue, not just with me and you, but with other principals and other teachers, and even students. Counselors. Yeah, I think that's a great place for us to continue to do things like this, but also using some of the technology that we have out there, like Zoom and breakout rooms and town hall forums. And I think the dialogue and conversation has to happen, because those relationships have to form. I remember I spoke at a church one time, and it was on race and racism. And afterwards, after we finished speaking, a gentleman came up to me, and he said, Dr. Brown, I was raised by the biggest bigots in Central Virginia, and I've been racist my entire life. And I know that's not what I'm supposed to do, and I want to change. Can you tell me how to talk to black people without putting my foot in my mouth every time? And I said, like, he was looking for a checklist.
Yeah.
Say this, this, and this. Make a Good Times reference, talk about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but there's no magic list to talk to black people. It is really about relationships, and that's what I told him. I said, how many black friends do you have? Well, I don't have any. I said, how many black people do you talk to on a weekly or daily basis? Well, I work with one guy, but so he had no relationship with anybody who was black or any other minority group. And you have to expand your circles, and I think that's one thing, one action item that all of us can do. Intentionally look at our circle, look at the bubble that we are in, and challenge that. Do we have outside perspectives? Do we have relationships with people so we can put ourselves in their shoes? And are we encouraging our students in our school to interact with other students from other ethnicities or other different groups. We have to have diversity in our lives because it enriches us and enriches our community, but we've got to be really intentional about that relationship piece.
I think the relationship piece and reaching out to get support if needed or not. I mean, we want our parents, we want our students to be able to talk to us about these things. We want to be able to have those conversations, and I think we can say we're sincere in saying we want this, because this isn't an easy thing to talk about. This is not an easy place for you or I to put ourselves in, but it is important, and it is worth whatever risk might come with that. And so I'm as genuine as I can be in saying that we want to hear from you, and we want to hear your perspective, and we want to know the struggles that you have in our schools, so we can start to do the things necessary to change that.
And I think that's powerful, and we acknowledge that we are still trying to process this. We are empathetic to the struggle, and we are empathetic to the emotion that everybody is feeling. And this isn't something that's just happened. This is something that's been ongoing, and there's a lot of frustration. And so we feel that too, and we want to be part of the solution, like you said. And we have to continue to stay connected with our constituents. We got to stay connected in our community and continue to move the needle forward. But we can't afford to throw our hands up and say this is too big of an issue. And we can't afford to say that we're scared or be fearful because of what people might say or what people might like or not like. And it's such a politically charged environment that we live in, and there's a lot of divisiveness in our community. We have got to come together and be united and realize that this is important for us to be able to move forward. We cannot move forward if we're divided. We can only move forward if we're united. And we have to take a stand. And I think this is a perfect opportunity and a perfect issue to take a stand on, that everybody should be on the same page and agree that all life is important and everybody deserves to be treated the same.
Yeah. And ultimately, we're a school system. And our job is to educate.
That's right.
And we want to educate our students to be more compassionate and empathetic, and the things that will ultimately make their lives better, make everyone's life better. And so, some people might question what our role in this is. And we deal with a lot of kids. We deal with a lot of parents. We are the community. And so we felt like it was necessary to come today to speak about some of these issues, to at least start the conversation, to assure families that it is very much front and center in terms of the things we know we have to improve, and to say that we are going to improve. And so I think that was kind of the goal of this. It's not easy, it's raw, it is uncomfortable, but I think our kids are worth it. I think the future of our country and for our students is so worth this conversation, and we need to continue it moving forward. We thank you for joining us. We encourage you to contact us with your thoughts. You can call my office, you can email me, same with Dr. Brown, but
same here.
With everybody in this school division, we want to hear from you.
And like I've said before, if we beat coronavirus but fail to cure the virus of injustice and racism, I'm afraid that we're still all doomed. And so I think this is a great first step, and I applaud you as a white man in a rural county for stepping up and saying, racism is something not going to be tolerated, and that we have inequities and things that we're working towards, and we have a plan, and we're taking this work seriously. That means a lot to not just myself, but our community as a whole, and appreciate you stepping up and being a leader in that way and moving us forward. So look forward to the work that we're going to continue to do. I mean, we have a lot of work to do.
Hard work. That's right.
But we're going to do it. So until next time.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys.